Hello, and welcome to another episode of Physical Format Rock and Roll, where we talk about all things rock and roll and classic metal, music that isn't just disposable. Physical format. So, today is going to be an episode of Album Fight. We pick two albums that are similar in some sort of fashion. They have something in common, maybe by the same artist. Compare the two a little bit, and then I pick a winner. So, let's get started. Tonight, we're going to talk about two albums by the Rolling Stones, one of the longest standing rock and roll bands in history. So anyway, the Rolling Stones, these are two albums that are kind of not known as their better albums, all right? We're not talking about Beggar's Banquet or Sticky Fingers or something like that, or Aftermath, anything. These are albums that are a little more bottom of the barrel maybe, but not necessarily. This is some of their work from the 70s. The Stones themselves commented on some of their later 70s work by saying it wasn't necessarily their best work. Matter of fact, they put out a compilation album called Sucking in the 70s, just kind of poking fun at it. But it's still the Rolling Stones, so you know there's still going to be some good music on there, right? I'm picking two albums that kind of came in between more well-known albums, better well-received. So first up is Black and Blue. All right. This was released in 1976. You see it opens up there and it's got a picture of him. And as you can see, this is the first time that Mr. Ronnie Wood gets to be involved or gets credit for being in the band. So, Black and Blue, like I said, was released in 76. Came after the It's Only Rock and Roll album. And it came before the Some Girls album. So, it's kind of like, stuck there somewhere. This was probably not one of their more well-known or well-received albums, but it's still got some good stuff on here. So let's look at the track listing a little bit. Starting off, we got Hot Stuff. See, they're kind of doing, messing around with that disco stuff a little bit, like they would do on the next album a little bit and have more success. Hand of Fate, Cherry O Baby, and my favorite song off this album is Memory Motel. It's a longer song. It's a slower type song, and it's a kind of one of those cool songs where if you're not familiar with it, I'd look it up. But Mick sings it. It's kind of like it's almost like a country song in a way. And it's got a part in there where Keith sings it. So they both sing lead on this song. So it's really cool. Next up is Hey Negrita. Now we're on side 2. Melody, Fool to Cry, another really good song, I think, and a slow one. It's a ballad. So, my favorite couple songs on here are actually like a country song and then a ballad. And then it finishes off with Crazy Mama, which I like that song, actually. I think it's a pretty cool song. So this is a song where, an album, I'm sorry. I'm not going to pull this thing out all the time when I want to hear a Stones album, but at the same time, it's a good album to play when, you don't want to hear some of the same Stones songs that you hear on the radio a lot. So you pick up one of these. So there you have it. Black and Blue. The other side, the rest of the material here, there's nothing that, really, it's never going to have songs on there where you're like, oh, these are, this goes up there with, Wild Horses or Satisfaction or Jumpin' Jack Flash, anything like that. There's nothing like that on here, okay? Still worthwhile, though. Still worth your time. Next up, I know I said 70s, but I'm kind of cheating a little bit. This was actually released in 1980. Emotional Rescue. All right. Now this is, because of my age, to me, when I started listening to music and getting more into rock and roll and stuff, of course, you know, I'm starting out with Kiss and Aerosmith and Queen and all that kind of stuff. So like to me at that time, and I sound stupid, but the Rolling Stones, I thought, you know, they're an old band, you know. They're an old band. I don't really care about them. Same way with Led Zeppelin, The Who, Pink Floyd, all that stuff. I think it normally takes a couple years for people to get into music to realize, oh, wait a minute. There's a lot of great rock and roll that was made before I was into it. So when I first kind of started to notice the Stones a little bit, was actually on this album. Before there was MTV, they had, I think it was Casey Kasem's Top 10 or something like that, and he would show some music videos. It was on Saturday morning. And they had the video to She's So Cold. And at that time, if you listen to that song, it kind of fit in with other things that were going on, like, you know, the Cars and whatnot. It had a bit of a new wave sound to it. Now, this came after the Some Girls album, okay? So it's kind of gets marked against it because obviously it's not as good as Some Girls. And it also comes before the Tattoo You album, which was another big hit. So just like Black and Blue, it's kind of sandwiched in there and it gets forgotten. Now, it also had a pretty decent hit with Emotional Rescue. So this album actually has a couple hits, as where this one those weren't really hits. Emotional Rescue and She's So Cold both got decent radio play. She's So Cold, you can still hear that on the radio. You don't hear Emotional Rescue on classic rock too much because it almost has like more of almost like a disco kind of feel to it. So I like it though. I really like that song. There's a lot to like on this album, I think. So on side one, you've got Dance. It's just, you know, that's nothing special. Summer Romance, Send It to Me, Let Me Go, Indian Girl. Indian Girl, definitely a different style song. It's another one of those kind of ballad type songs. But all the rest of the, you know, Summer Romance, Send It to Me, and Let Me Go are all these just up-tempo songs that the Stones would do, throw in there for the next 20 years or more. They weren't necessarily great songs, but they were all pretty good. You know, they were all pretty good songs to listen to. They're just good little rockin' songs. Side two, we start out with Where the Boys Go. That's a good one. Down in a Hole, that's a blues song, slow blues. Then we go to Emotional Rescue, She's So Cold, She's So Cold. And then it finishes with All About You, which is actually Keith. Keith gets a song on here. I like that song. He sounds like Keith on that. His voice gets really gravelly at times on that song, especially like toward the end. And actually, that's one of my favorite parts of that song. It's a blues type song. It's got horns in it. It's one of those songs where if it wasn't Keith singing it, I probably wouldn't care about it. So, like I said, this is where I started to notice the Stones, and then I really got into them with the Tattoo You album. So to me, this is kind of like the Stones I started getting into a little bit, because after I got Tattoo You, I started going back, getting some of these other albums, because to be honest with you, I could find these albums cheaper in markdown bins. I couldn't get, you know, Beggar's Banquet and Sticky Fingers, all that stuff was always, you know, regular price. They never went down, but these, I could find these in the bargain bins. So this was kind of the Stones I started out with. So I've described this album a little bit. I talked about Black and Blue. Fool to Cry is a song on it. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. It's starting to storm outside, and I'm just hoping that a tree doesn't fall in my house. Anyway, so now you know what we got to do. We've got two of the lesser-known Stones albums. 76, Black and Blue. 80, Emotional Rescue. I think you can probably tell by how I talked about each album that I'm going to pick Emotional Rescue. Definitely not my favorite Stones album. I would never say that, but I like it. It's got enough stuff on here to carry it through. I've got it on record and CD. I've got this on record and cassette, so I liked it enough to buy these things twice, as far as that goes, I guess. So Emotional Rescue wins the album fight tonight of the lesser known Stones albums. You know, if maybe you have never really paid attention to this and you're a Stones fan, or a quasi-Stones fan, you want to hear some songs that you don't always hear, pick up one of these two. Especially, I recommend Emotional Rescue. It's a good album. So, there you go. Emotional Rescue wins the album fight tonight. I'm Gary, and this has been another episode of Physical Format Rock and Roll. And I will see you down the road.